Carry on. So today we're going to talk about Simchat Torah, the Yom Tov at the end of Sukkot, where we dance with the Torah. Very fascinating, although Simchat Torah is a very popular and happy and jolly and well-known holiday. Actually, it's not at all mentioned in the Talmud. It's not at all mentioned in any of the works of the Rishonim. The first time we get to see about Simchat Torah was only a few hundred years ago. It's actually mentioned in the Ramah. The Ramah is on the Shulchan Aruch, of Rabbi Yosef Karo. So the Ramah, his name was Rabbi Moshe Isserlis. He wrote notations, especially directed towards the Ashkenazi community. He wrote that on the, we have here in text one, the final day of the festival of Sukkot is called Simchat Torah, which means rejoicing with the Torah. Why is it called that? And as much as we celebrate and make a festive meal to mark the completion of the Torah, it's customary that the person who merits to conclude the Torah, as well as the person who merits to read the first portion of Bereshis, donate and call upon others to make a festive meal. This is the origin. This is the first mention we have of this custom. Somebody building a sukkah. It's also customary. So there's a custom to, again, we have to decide when to finish the Torah. We'll soon see about that. But once the Torah is finished, the person who gets the final aliyah, so he's called the Chatan Torah, the one who has completed the Torah, and then we immediately start the Torah again, because the reason we start the Torah immediately again is because there's a prosecuting angel who comes and says the Jews are, they're just happy they finished the Torah, they're making a celebration. I don't want to use the words, I won't use those words. There's words people sometimes say about good riddance. God forbid we should even think that a Jew has that kind of approach. But he may think they're excited they finished, and we know when you finish something there's some excitement. Torah, first of all, you never really finish. Second of all, you want to really emphasize that the finish is only the beginning of a introduction to the next cycle. If we wait till next week, the prosecuting angel has a whole week to make trouble. So we do it right away. It's called Matkifin Atchalta La'ashlamta. You bring the beginning of the Torah very close to the end of the Torah. Same day, so we go from Torah to Torah without any interruption. Continues the Ramah, it is also customary in these parts to take all the Torahs out in the evening and the morning and to sing songs, each place according to its custom. Another custom is to surround the bima with the Torah scrolls from the synagogue, as we do with the lulav on Sukkot, which we'll soon talk about. All of this is done to increase joy. So we want to be rejoicing with the Torah. We're looking for ways. We take out the Torahs, we dance with them, we circle the bima, which we'll soon see was reminiscent to what took place in the Beis HaMikdash. But this is all something that came out 15th century. What are we talking about? 600 years? Something like that. It's very recent. In text 2 we have a quote that's brought to the Mishnah Berurah, but he writes, in the name of Rabbi Hai Gaon, we are accustomed to dancing on this day. Even the elderly participate in the festivities praising the Torah. Sure. It was started because that's when we finish the Torah. That's what there were different customs about how the Torah should be read. Once every year finished, or once every 3 years. The prevailing custom that took place in Babylon, as it was 2,000 years ago, was the Torah is read on an annual basis. The question is when to finish the Torah. There was some that had the custom to finish it before Rosh Hashanah, some that had the custom to finish it right before Yom Kippur, and then on Yom Kippur they would read start reading the new book, Bereshis. But the customs associated with Simchat Torah, rejoicing and dancing and so on, didn't yet develop till much later. So we have the Ramah, the Rabbi Moshe Isserlis was only about 400 years ago. And he mentions it, that this custom is to to dance with the Torah, to actually to make a feast. Really, the truth of the matter is that the source of Simchat Torah is really, can be traced back to a concept brought in the Medrash. Medrash in Shir HaShirim, not Shir HaShirim, Medrash of Kohelet, speaks about Shlomo HaMelech's wisdom. He was the wisest man on earth. And it says that Shlomo HaMelech, when he finished studying, finished absorbing all the wisdom he was taught, he made a feast. The Medrash speaks about, uses the words, Mikan she'osim su'udah ligmara shel Torah. From here we see that we make a feast when we complete something in Torah. So that's the real earliest basis, that if you finish the Torah, Simchat Torah, which was not the case everywhere, but for many hundreds of years, maybe even close to 2,000 years, that was the prevailing custom. The Rambam 800 years ago writes that the system of finishing the Torah once every 3 years is no longer acceptable, really, no longer practiced by many. We finish the Torah once a year. If we finish it right before Sukkot, or we actually finish it on the last day of Sukkot, which is Simchat Torah, so then we have the concept brought in the Medrash that there's a concept to make a feast to celebrate the ending. If it's a feast, so we saw that Ramah says the one who finishes makes a feast, the one who starts also wants to show the excitement of starting will also make a feast. After that, they developed a concept to make more excitement, to make more joy. We want to take out the Torahs as well. And because, as we'll see in the Beis HaMikdash, they used to go around the Mizbeach with the Arava. It was a on Sukkot to go around the Mizbeach with the willow branches. So, and Sukkot is a time of joy. So the time of joy, we're going around the Mizbeach, around the altar with the willow branches. So from this comes a concept that even when we don't have a Mizbeach, somebody will hold the Torah on the bima, and we'll go around with our willows, just as a remembrance of the Beis HaMikdash. But once that became associated with joy, so now if we want to rejoice with the Torah, we do a similar concept. We go around the Torah with we go around the bima holding our Torahs, and this is an action associated with Sukkot, and therefore an action associated with joy. So that kind of developed into the concept, the minhag, the custom of doing hakafas and doing circuits around the bima with the Torah, and thus expressing our joy. What's so important about the joy? So in the second paragraph here in the text 2, we say that one ought to invest energy and dance and sing to the honor of the Torah, as is stated already regarding King David. It says that he was hopping and dancing before Hashem. The Arizal is also cited as saying a similar thing, that to dance in honor of Hashem is very, very important, very holy. The Arizal said that the gates of wisdom and divine inspiration were opened for him, and he lived a very short life. He died in his late 30s, but he was, today, most of the Kabbalah that is studied is in the doctrine, according to the teachings of the Arizal. And he says that where were the gates of divine inspiration open for him as a reward for doing mitzvot with boundless joy. And here, lest there be those that think this was only the Hasidim really get excited about Simchat Torah, but not so much those that didn't emanate from Hasidic circles. So here we have a quote. Mishnah Berurah does say that it is said about the Gaon of Vilna that he too would dance with all his might in front of the Torah. So this concept of dancing in front of the Torah on Simchat Torah is a very important concept. Let's understand why dancing in front of Hashem is so important. Just at a very simple level. There's doing, fulfilling, and then there's really showing how excited you are and how desirous the Torah is to you that you're so excited about it. You know, very simply, when we do something for somebody else, somebody you love asks you to bring please, could you please make me a cup of coffee? You can bring it and just, here it is. You can bring it and show how, would you like some tea? Would you like some sugar? How would you like it? Come down here. Show your joy. So obviously, the channels that are opened up, when you show your excitement and your joy, your love, is obviously going to be a conduit for receiving Hashem's blessing. And we know that in front of Hashem, it says there's only, with Kedusha, where there's holiness, there's joy. There's no room for very simply the things that cause us anxieties and sadness and so on is only because of our limited perspective. We don't see things from God's perspective. In front of Hashem, Hashem is the ultimate of good. Everything is good. So happiness, appreciating Hashem's goodness and so on, this is a conduit, this is a vessel receiving Hashem's blessing. So now, let's continue just to see some other sources. Quoted in the Gemara in Megillah, this is ready for the Gemara. The people of the West, which means Bavel, conclude the Torah every 3 years. Sorry, Eretz Yisrael, the West is Israel, I'm sorry. They conclude the 5 books one time over the course of 3 years, not every year as we do, says Rashi. So Rashi is already saying almost 1,000 years ago that we do it once a year. And you can see in the laws of in Rambam, the laws Hilchos Tefillah, text number 4, the common custom throughout all Israel is to complete the reading of the Torah in 1 year. The cycle begins on the Shabbos after Sukkot, reading the Seder Bereshis. We continue reading according to this order until the Torah is completed during the Sukkot festival. There are those who finish the Torah reading in a 3-year cycle, however, this is not a widely accepted custom. Now, finishing the Torah on the last day of Sukkot was not always the universal custom. Finishing it in 1 year was already since the days of since Bavel, since the days of the Talmud already. But finishing it on the Torah was not necessary. We have here a quote from the Oitzer HaGaonim, which is a collection of Gaonic times were less than 2,000 years ago, but for full details, look at my father's book, the Jewish Timeline Encyclopedia, or Codex Judaica. At any rate, in the compendium of the Gaonim it writes, there's a custom to recite the verses from Bereshis until one day, by Erev Vayibok Yom Echad, and they cite, this is on Yom Kippur he refers to. The translation is lacking. The Mincha of Yom Kippur, some have the custom to recite not the reading we read, but to read from the book of Bereshis. Why is that? They cite support for this custom from the fact that the entire 10 days of Teshuvah, the Satan seeks to prosecute the Jews. What does he say? He says, look, the Jews are finished with the Torah you gave them. If you finish it before Rosh Hashanah, he has a point. He says, over. When God hears the Jews starting anew from Bereshis, he immediately chastises the Satan and exclaims, don't you cheat? Don't you see? The Jews have immediately restarted the Torah, for they love it so much. Immediately the Satan is forcibly silenced. So, we have here a different custom, but the custom has become to finish the Torah on the last day of Sukkot. That's become the accepted custom.
Is this saying that they used to be studied, Bereshis used to be studied around Rosh Hashanah? I see a connection there.
No, he's saying is that it would be finished before Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah, we have the Rosh Hashanah readings. What they would do in this order between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, I'm not sure, but on Yom Kippur they would start the Torah again. I don't know what they did with the Shabbos between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. I'm not sure.
Hashem is very wise. He would know that this is to finish the Torah as part of the constitution will be continue it.
Hashem gives us free choice. So let me ask you a question like this. When you get a bonus, you work in a company, you get a bonus. Every year you get a bonus. Comes December 31st. Will you spend the bonus even though you're only getting it on January 1st? Some people will, but responsible people will not. There's a difference between a bonus and a salary. A bonus means the owner of the company can decide not to give it. God gives us free choice. Just because every year we start again does not mean that this year we're going to start again. Because the Satan banks on the fact that, oh, this year I have inside information. It's a bad year this year. They're disappointed with you, God. They're not going to restart the Torah. Can God say, I guarantee they will? No, because he gave us free choice. So technically, so that's why when we start it again, we have to actually prove it with our deeds. So you're saying Hashem knows. Anyway, the fact that Hashem knows the future, that's for sure. that doesn't come in, he gives us free choice anyway. That's a different discussion. What you're asking is that even the Satan, he should know he's going to be knocked out of the court, because every year they start again. But he knows also that we have free choice, so it's possible that we won't start again. Maybe if he crawls into us deeply enough, he'll convince us not to. You know, some people opt out at some stage. It's not always fortunate. However, we haven't talked much about all the customs of Simchas, and not much goes on Simchas Torah in these references we made, except we finish the Torah, we rejoice. You know, we have a lot of custom that takes place. So here we have a quote from a book, the Kolbo, Sefer Kolbo. Sefer Kolbo is in 15th century, someplace in the middle of 15th century. So he refers to several customs. So we see the customs developing at somewhere 600-700 years ago. It goes as far, 600 years ago. The 9th day is the festival of Simchas Torah. The custom is to read the parsha of Zot HaBracha, which is the final passage of the Torah. We are exceedingly joyous on this day. And the custom is to call up more people than usual to the Torah. Now this is already a new custom. Usually you only call up 7 people. Here he's saying, you call up more people. The last 8 verses are read by a distinguished person, and the maftir is read from a second scroll. After the Haftorah, Ashrei is recited, and then the congregation stands on the podium with the scrolls. There's also a custom to take out all the scrolls from the ark, and for the elderly to stand with them on the podium. The assembled mourn the death of Moshe, the master of all prophets, and anyone who has donated to the honor of God, as well as the deceased, is given an honorary mention, as well as Moshe. Prayers are recited for the entire Jewish nation. Thereafter, the scrolls are returned to the ark, and the Musaf prayer is recited. So we see here a custom of taking out all the Torahs. And where did, however, the Hakafos, where did the Hakafot, the going around with the Torah start? It appears, there's a book called Toldot Chag, Simchat Torah, the history of how Simchas Torah developed, which I don't have. I just learned about it. I would like to, maybe I'll get a copy somehow. But it's interesting to see how Simchas Torah developed. But it seems that the concept of Hakafot started in Israel, and particularly was popular with the Arizal, and it spread. You know, whatever started in Israel eventually spread. You know why? Israel always needed money from the diaspora. There's a bit of a difference. It's interesting that today Israel, in many ways, has a lot of financial strength. Even so, there's still collections in the diaspora of Israel. So what the traditional way used to be, there would be a shadar, shluchah d'Rabbanan, a representative of the rabbis in Israel. Don't forget, there was no industry virtually in Israel. People who went to Israel didn't have much opportunity. There wasn't much farming going on there at the time, I don't think. They needed to be supported. They were like, people who went to Israel were supported by the wealthy Jews in Eastern Europe. So, but they would send, Europe and Northern Africa and all these countries, they would send messengers, they would send representatives to collect money. So customs, but Israel was looked at as being a place of holiness, especially Tzfat and so on. But so customs could move across borders in that way. So apparently Israel was the place where this concept of the Hakafot, going around the bima with the Torah, started. Why did it start? It really dates back to the meaning of the Arava. You see here in text 7, as we mentioned earlier. How was the precept of the willow branch carried out? There was a place below Yerushalayim called Motzah. They went down there and gathered young willow branches, and then came back and fixed them at the sides of the Mizbeach, so that their tops bent over the Mizbeach. It then sounded a tekiah, teruah, and again a tekiah. Every day they went around the Mizbeach once, saying, Ana Hashem, Hoshiana, Ana Hashem, Atzlichana. We beseech you, Hashem, save us now. We beseech you, Hashem, make us successful now. Rabbi Yehuda said they were saying, Ani Vahu, Hoshiana, which is a adaptation of Hashem's name, Ani Vahu, that Hashem should save us now. And on that day, on Hoshana Rabbah, the last day of Sukkot, the 7th day of Sukkot, they went around 7 times. So from that, we have a concept that's brought down in the Yalkut Shimoni. What do we do if we don't have a temple? 2,000 years already. The Yalkut Shimoni said they would make 7 circuits on that day, because remembering the Beis Hamikdash. Rabbi Chia said it commemorates Jericho during the times when there was during the times, it reminds us of Jericho. Okay. Now we continue, we say, the Medrash says, when we have a Beis HaMikdash, look. So we know what to do. That's what they did. We go around. What do we do if we don't have a Beis HaMikdash? So the Medrash says, in the current era, the leader of the congregation stands like an angel with a Torah scroll in his arm, and the congregation makes circuits similar to the altar. So this is what we will do. On Sukkot, we'll take out a Sefer Torah, and we'll walk around the Bima with our lulav and esrog and our willow branch in memory of the Beis HaMikdash. So we have various, now the way it's developed, we have a number of customs of Simchat Torah. Some of them are, we give collective aliyahs. We here have adopted what they do in 770, the Rebbe Shul, so they would only read the Torah once. There's two ways of giving everybody aliyahs. Either keep reading the same portions over and over, and that usually we're not allowed to do. Simchat Torah we do it. When I was growing up in the shul I was going to in Melbourne, that's what they did. In 770s, the Parkway, everybody was crammed together, thousands of people in the Rebbe Shul. They only read the Torah once, there were 5 aliyahs plus maftir. The Rebbe got the beginning of the Torah, Chassav Bereshis. So what the Rabbanim there said to do was to do collective aliyahs. You can call a bunch of people at the same time to the Torah, and you don't even have to get to the Torah. You can make a bracha on the Torah from the distance. That's a leniency that's adopted only on Simchat Torah, because everybody should go to the Torah. Usually we don't do it, we give everybody an individual aliyah. Simchat Torah, as we do here in our shul, we'll designate each one of the aliyahs as being one. You can decide which aliyah you want to join. Right? We also have, it's the only time we call up the children. We have the aliyahs kol ha'na'ara. Usually children don't get aliyahs. We call them up for aliyah. Some communities have the minute they read Torah at night. It's not the minute Chabad, but there are many places where they'll take out and they'll read the Torah at Simchat Torah night. Never another time we read at night. It's the only time really we dance with the Torah officially, because we bring a new Torah into town. Otherwise, this is the time we dance with the Torah. Duchanen, Birchas Kohanim is moved, the blessing of the Kohanim is moved from Musaf to Shachris. Why? The Ashkenazi communities where we only do Birchas Kohanim in Musaf, why do we move it to Shachris? Because the Kohen is not allowed, before a Kohen goes to the service, he's not allowed to drink even a cup of wine. We assume that because of the dancing with the Torah that takes place before Musaf, a Kohen would have drunk a cup of wine at least. So he can't do the Birchas Kohanim. So we change, the custom is to change the Birchas Kohanim based on an assumption that the guy's going to have something to drink. So these are customs that we still do today. There were other customs that speak about not using firecrackers, which seems they used to make loud noises with firecrackers. It's not a good custom. It's been stopped. It's a problem with the laws of Yom Tov, and so on. Various customs. What I find fascinating in this, whoever prepared this class brought something from. It's actually a class by Rabbi Jacobson. So I don't know where he discovered this, but there's a diary by Rabbi Yosef. There's a diary recorded by a guy from October 14th, 1663. A guy by the name of Samuel Pepys, P-E-P-Y-S. Apparently he's a famous English diarist who visited a synagogue in London. He was there on October 14th, apparently he was Simchat Torah. And he speaks about dancing, 1663. How many years ago is that? 1663.
400 years ago.
A little bit less than 400, 370 years ago. He says, he describes Simchat Torah, and then he says like this: "But Lord, to see the disorder, laughing, sporting, and no attention, but confusion in all their service, more like brutes than people, knowing the true God would make, more than people knowing the true God, would make a man forswear ever seeing them more. And indeed I never did see much or could have imagined there had been any religion in the whole world so absurdly performed as this." Almost 400 years ago. Simchat Torah didn't just start looking very exciting and very... If you just, first, only time in your life you come to shul on Simchat Torah, you may get some wrong impressions.
I brought my wife to shul, and it happened to be Simchat Torah. She's like, "No wonder you are."
Yeah, it's if you come on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and Sukkot, then you see how we pray and how we get inspired, and how we cry, and how we, and then he comes to the story, and you see a different expression. The guy only lands up, you put him in from Mars, he never heard anything about Jews, he landed up with Simchat Torah, I think, wow, what are these guys doing here? So, apparently though, it's not a new thing. Simchat Torah actually, in every shul that I know, I think in every community, Simchat Torah is just, everyone on their level with their custom, Simchat Torah is just a little bit more disorderly and unstructured. Let's just say that. But anyway, so let's understand. It's not really. It's not brought in the Gemara. It's definitely not brought in the 5 books of Moses. It's not brought in the prophets. Not brought in the Gemara. It's pretty fairly recent custom. But let's give some deeper perspective to it. Text number 9. The famous Gemara in the Sefer Menachos. Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rav, when Moshe ascended to heaven during his stay on Mount Sinai, he found the Holy One, blessed be, found Hashem, fixing crowns, tagim, thin lines to the letters of the Torah. I should have some kind of a tikkun. If we had a tikkun, we could show, but there's I think there's maybe a tikkun in there. So, yeah. Is there? Let's see if there is. Then we'll find if there's tagim, the crowns on the Torah. It's actually interesting to see. We still have them in the Torah now. If we can find the tikkun, then we can.
While we're looking.
Yes. We got the tikkun. Thank you. Okay. Let's see if we have a. Okay, that's small, but take any shin. Any shin, you'll see. The little 3 things, 3 hairs like that. See it? Press it down and if you don't mind putting it in the video, so.
And would that be,
closer to the video.
is every shin have just,
every gimel ayin, sorry, shatnez, shin, ayin, tet, nun, zayin, and then gimel and tzadik, they all have tagim. Did you see it? On any shin. You see those little hairs?
like a little
Like
flag?
little, very small in this book. See if we can put it in there. Look at the screen to see if you can see it. That's called like crowns on the Torah. There's there's 7 letters on which those crowns always go. I'm trying to show the people also that we'll be able to see.
Okay, let me ask you. Every Sefer Torah, regardless of the community, has the same crowns on the
There
same
are
letters?
some different customs, but generally speaking, that's the norm. There are some various. I'm not fully familiar with all the variances. I can come out.
Focus.
Okay. We tried. I don't think I'm making any sense.
And as their meaning.
Okay, so now let's. Are you able to have a focus on shin? And we should see the shin tagim. Sofer writes it with those things. Yeah.
But there's different.
There are some different nuances. There's different ways how to fashion the letters, different details in the shape, there's different opinions and so on. But the general gist is the same.
Like as far as Sefer Torah, they have the same.
There's different, the fonts, the letters have different, slightly different nuances in terms of their, what you call it. Okay. Maybe just leave it. And we'll do it afterwards. Okay. So Moshe, so again, the Medrash says, the Gemara says, Rabbi Yehuda says when Moshe Rabbeinu went up to the mountain, he found Hashem fixing crowns, those little thin lines to the letters of the Torah. Moshe asked Hashem, Master of the universe, what is lacking in the words themselves that you must add crowns as well? Hashem answered, there will arise a man after many generations, Akiva the son of Yosef is his name, will expound upon each of these lines, upon each of these crowns, heaps upon heaps of laws. Moshe asked Hashem, Master of the universe, show him to me. Hashem responded, retreat backwards. Moshe went and sat at the edge of the 8th row of Rabbi Akiva's lecture hall. And could not understand what they were saying. They arrived at a certain matter, and Moshe heard the students asking Rabbi Akiva, how do you know that? The students asked Rabbi Akiva, how do you know that? Rabbi Akiva replied, it's a tradition from Moshe at Sinai. Moshe was relieved. Because Moshe initially, Tashash Kocho, Moshe initially got very weak. He felt very faint. They're saying a law, he's the originator of Torah, and Rabbi Akiva is saying something that he never taught. And he's saying it based on a certain nuance. So when they asked, how do you know that? He said, this is a tradition from Moshe at Sinai. Moshe understood that he had taught it. This was also coming from him. He had taught the rules. He had taught the concepts. It just needed to be extrapolated. It's all there at Sinai. Now let's try and understand some deeper meaning.
One question. This seems to indicate that Rabbi Akiva had definitions for the meanings of the crowns. Is there any sefer or any study manual that says what the definitions are?
No, not that I know. And I'm not sure. I'm not sure that it only means the crowns. It also means all of the nuances of the letters.
So it's symbolic.
I think so, but you know what? I'm not sure. I haven't seen anything particularly about that. But now let's understand. What did Moshe, in an allegoric way, what Moshe didn't understand and what Rabbi Akiva understood from those tagim? Let's talk about those lines. So if you understand, we know that the Jewish people are considered yesh shishim ribu otiyot laTorah. There are 600,000 letters in the Torah. We consider that every Jew has his letter in the Torah. Every Jew is rooted in the Torah. Of course, we say there's 600,000 Jews. There's many more, but there's 600,000 general souls. When we say 600,000 letters in the Torah, we know there's only 300 and something thousand. But there's a method of counting also the vowels and the crowns and so on, which Alter Rebbe says we don't know exactly how to calculate, but that somehow comes to a symbolic, to a number of 600,000. So every Jew is represented in the Torah. So we talk about general souls, and then throughout the generations we get splinters of those general souls. So it's as if each soul, each splinter of a soul is enough to power a whole body. But conceptually, the amount of Jews that left Egypt and received the Torah was 600,000 men, which included the souls also of the women and children, included the souls of the future generations, but they're all more splintered. Which also explains why whatever happened to the Jews leaving Egypt and getting the Torah is binding upon us all, because we all emanate from that. We're all there in that form. But now if we understand all Jews to be represented by a letter in the Torah, let's understand a very nice concept. There are letters in the Torah, and then there are the crowns in the Torah. What kind of a Jew would be represented by a full letter in the Torah? If you had to try and describe a Jew that's hanging on by a hair, or a Jew who's an unequivocal, proud, clearly definable letter in the Torah, we would probably say that the more observant, identifiable, proud, self-aware Jew, he's like a letter in the Torah. Who would be represented by we saw the tagim, the crown, they're very small, hard to see them even. There, okay, we have a small book, but even in a big Torah, like little hairs going up from the letters. Who would be represented by those little hairs? Jews that their connection to Judaism is a little bit more tenuous. They're connected, but not every day, not all the time. Like when we stand in Manhattan, on the mitzvah tanks, you can very often know who's a Jew, because you ask, excuse me sir, are you Jewish? So the non-Jew usually says no. The Jew, who's maybe hanging on by a hair, will say, why do I look Jewish? like what for? Like what do you ask for? Oh, you know this guy. There are some Jews that are hanging on by a hair.
follow through and you didn't believe in anything, and you were just a fraction.
See, that's what happens if it's a Jew who didn't really believe. He was hanging on by a hair, and now he starts believing. So let's understand who Rabbi Akiva is. First, let's understand who Moshe Rabbeinu is. Moshe Rabbeinu, it says in text 10, others say he was born circumcised. He was so holy at birth, he didn't even have a foreskin, which represents negativity, which we cut off. Hashem tells us to cut it off. He didn't even have it. And the sages declare, at the time when Moshe was born, the whole house was filled with light. He was already born as a tzaddik. Of course, that's amazing. But who was Rabbi Akiva? Moshe's connection with Hashem was unchallenged, was never in question, was constant. He never doubted God. He was still humble. But he didn't have to deal with the conflict of doubting God and of going through that internal struggle. He was humble because he knew, on the contrary, he knew that the gifts he was given were not his. And he had to, of course, he took them to he developed them, and he pursued, and he persevered, and he gave every fiber of his being to bringing it to the absolute maximum level. But in his perspective, he was thinking, maybe I could have done better. Maybe somebody else would have done better with those gifts. But notwithstanding that, Moshe Rabbeinu represents the person who's been there all the time, holy, and so on. Rabbi Akiva comes from a different background. We all know the famous story that Rabbi Akiva was working for his employer. What was his name? Who's Rachel's daughter? Rachel was the daughter of Kalba Savua. Kalba Savua is a satisfied dog. Why? He was so wealthy, people that went into his house as hungry as a dog came out satisfied. He's a charitable person also. But he had an uncouth young person, or uncouth, unlearned young man working for him by the name of Akiva. Rachel should have been married to one of the greatest sages of the generation. She comes from a wealthy father. Father can support a scholar to sit and study, and that traditionally, if you were able to afford it, you were able to try and get a fine son-in-law who really wanted to study all his life, you could pay for it. But she decided that this young worker was a very special man.